Hello. Hi, Rich. Hi, Darren. How are we?
Hey, doing well. How are you?
Fantastic.
Yeah, good. Well, Rich, we're so excited to have you on and join our podcast webinar today. I think all our readers and listeners and all our viewership will be really interested in your thoughts, given your impressive background and history and all these marquee brands that you work at. So I think before we begin, it'd be great just to have a bit of background on you, and just tell
Yeah,
us in your own words. Yeah, it'd be great.
of course. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Also, very excited to be here and speak with both you and Darren. So, yeah, my background is a little interesting. I think, like many of us, we kind of dream and go to school and want to do something so particular, and then we realize that adaptability is probably our biggest strength, and we wind up learning skills and moving around the industry. So, um, studied undergrad and wanted to do music business. This is kind of what I always knew I wanted to do since I was about 13 or 14 years old, and loved them, actually playing an instrument, but wasn't that good. So I was like, let me use some of that business skill and head to the music business side. So I worked my way through a couple of the majors, Sony, and then through some private companies such as TouchTunes, which, if anyone's familiar, had these like jukeboxes inside bars and restaurants, and worked a little bit on licensing and royalties for those companies. And then I made that shift that I was talking about, and didn't know much about business affairs or advertising business affairs at the time, and wound up working for a few different ad agencies such as McCann Erickson, and then making my way to some really big agencies like 72 and Sunny and RGA in New York. And of course, when the pandemic hit, like many of us were wondering, where do we go from here? We're all remote. Our lifestyles have changed so much, and a little company called TikTok came knocking, and I answered and took a chance, and obviously it turned out to be an amazing opportunity for me, kind of in parallel with the pandemic and being home. And then from there, I decided to branch out, and that's where I started my consultancy, Musica Creative, about 3 years ago, like this past Monday, and started working with some music production libraries and different clients, and then started freelancing contract work for companies like Meta, and kind of getting involved in their marketing and their business affairs side as well. Again, more in like the legal compliance, but the licensing side. And that has kind of led up to today, where I also work with newer companies like Airbnb, and then also a music startup called Third Chair.
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah, no, seriously impressive names that you've got there in your repertoire. I guess the first question that I've got in my lockup, Rich, is obviously you've got, you know, your kind of where you undergrad, and then obviously you've had a few shifts and changes and,
Sure.
gone through the pandemic. I suppose what's that kind of, just to kick things off broadly, what is one belief about marketing, business affairs, creative operations that
Yeah,
you your mind about
yeah.
recently? Yeah,
I think I kind of touched on the intro, and I think that key
yeah,
word for me is adaptability.
yeah,
Um, the same story can look different depending on like where people encounter it, right? So I think that's the biggest part of marketing, and my belief in marketing is adaptability, and being sure to resonate, and relevance really beats repetition in my mind. Like, we kind of see the same ads in our world, and through various companies, there's so many competitors. Everything is pretty saturated when you think of like a beauty vertical, or music vertical, that we have so many options. So it's adaptability and being able to shift your tone or your messaging to reach the audience that you're intending to reach.
brilliant.
I've got a question for you. If
Sure.
Rich, if you look back on your journey from agencies to platforms like TikTok and now Airbnb, what have you learned about how the creative process has evolved?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, um, yeah, I mean, I have to really think about that one. Um, the creative process. So I think what changed the most was before pandemic, before the rise of TikTok. Um, we did a lot of reactive marketing in a way, right? Like you were kind of like researching and focus groups and things like that, and kind of building product. And I think with the rise of TikTok, we actually use it as a way to test in that creative process. So it's like testing your ideas, and we weren't so afraid of is this going to resonate with the audience. It was more of like let's try this, right? Let's get some of these people to do these things. Like these TikTok hashtag challenges were huge during the pandemic, and getting all these people to engage with trends and create this viral moment. And that was what everyone was kind of after. So I think the creative process changed a little bit for the better, in the sense that we were a little bit more flexible and free in our mentality to go ahead and kind of bring an idea to market, and we weren't so calculated as we previously were.
And touching on that, you've worked with brands like Coke, and how do you balance creative instinct with the realities of licensing and rights? Because obviously you've got deep experience in rights management, but when it comes to the creativity around that and in advertising, how do you balance that?
Yeah, that's like, I mean, the $1 million question, right? How do we push that line and walk that line, really, of like pushing that boundary of the most creative expression, while respecting the rights of all of the intellectual IP owners that we are trying to protect, and we are trying to ensure that they get their monetized and talent are compensated fairly, right? These are all things that we do care about in business affairs. So I think it's constant conversation. The answer to your question there, Darren, it's like meetings with the right people, creatives, legals, like bringing together everyone to make sure that we can ensure that we are compensating, and we're not finding loopholes, but we're actually involving the right people and bringing ideas to the table, and bringing these ideas in early on to the IP owners is also a great thing, because if they can get on board with the idea, they might be more willing and more flexible to license or be part of the campaign. So I think constant conversation would be the answer to that, to making sure that we can do things to the highest creative level, but also fairly, and compensate IP owners.
Great, thanks, Rich. And just to take things broader again, I think Darren could go probably a bit more niche with the question potentially. But what would you say is like the biggest challenge that teams are facing today?
Yeah, I think the one I've been touching on recently is like the creative burnout, which is disguised as like data-driven decision making. Like we're drowning in metrics, right? Everything we're doing is metrics and data driven, and we're optimizing for algorithms and instead of for audiences, really, in my opinion. So it's remembering that like marketing is still a human connection. It's not all dashboards. And so I think that is the biggest decision that we're kind of facing. And of course, it's much more front and center with the advent of AI and technology, right? It's on everyone's mind. We're always talking about it, constantly talking about it. And we do have to remember that there are some things that just really rely on human connection.
That's an interesting point. Sorry, Darren, go ahead.
What are some of the hot topics from an AI perspective that you've been hearing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm across everything. So when you think of, the OpenAI, Sunos, the music, the opt-in that we all heard about, like from OpenAI a couple of weeks ago, or the opt-out, I should say, with rights holders and with Sora and all of that. So we're pretty much on the pulse of everything. But I do think that I will say, like, we're not anti-AI in the business affairs world by any means. I think automation and anything that we can do to enhance efficiency is something that we are all, I think any of us on this call would probably be like, that's a great thing, right? But when you do get into the likeness kind of area where using people's persona, voice, image, that's something that we do always have to take like a very conservative stance on in our world because of the dangers of that. Can you make people do things that they normally wouldn't do, right? Or participate in things that they normally wouldn't participate in. So, or can you incentivize a group of people to think that a celebrity did a deal that they didn't do? So, we do take that conservative stance there.
Amazing. And I guess just to follow up on that kind of question, do you think that AI could help? So you mentioned kind of a few things there with like Sora and Suno, the music, and obviously getting into a bit of trouble there. But on the flip side, Rich, do you think AI can actually help with solving rights issues and
yeah, and I think for sure, and I think even taking like a broader look at it, I think in the role of like marketing in general, I think AI is amazing, and we have to kind of think of AI as like our co-pilot, right? In our process. It's the tool that does that like heavy lifting so that the humans can focus on the storytelling, the emotion, the messaging, like I touched on earlier. It's incredible for, again, like pattern recognition and personalization, but like the core of like the brand storytelling to me is still that human intuition and that empathy. So the AI is really like the amplification, not the artist in a way, right? It's not the creator, in my opinion.
How do you get that balance right?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely trial and error. I think when we talk about AI, and even from like a very like generative AI, right? It's like the prompt has to be human, right? Whenever we're putting something into something like that. So I think the balance is how much of the work are you doing? How much are you letting go? And I think we all know as humans, like when we're letting something take too much control. And yes, we like exploring it. We like pushing the boundary, but some of what I think the role is taking some of that back, like that human part back. And I'm not saying, I do think, again, I think of it as a co-pilot, like it has to be hand in hand sitting right next to you, like driving something together, but I don't think it should ever take like that front seat.
Yeah, I shouldn't be doing the sorry.
Rich, what are some of the biggest mistakes you've seen marketers make when it comes to content rights?
Oh man. There's like easy ones, like I always call it like low hanging fruit, like just using things without permission is probably the biggest one. Or thinking because it's available to you that, that's something we encounter at TikTok a lot. It's like, just because something is available to you, I could use it because it's available to me, and it's not how it works, right? I think the biggest thing is education. So I don't think there are enough brands that are educating their teams, and I think it has to be a constant process, and that's what business affairs really is. It's like we're constant educators of the industry and of our clients and our brands, our agencies, to stay again front and center with the new copyright laws or any amendments or changes that come down. We're supposed to be conveying that so that brands don't just think, oh yeah, I had access to this song, I used it, oops, I'm sorry, I'll take it down. And that's typically not enough, right? We're seeing that a lot in our world is, yes, cease and desist is step one, but usually step two is the settlement. So most people don't see that happens in the background.
And do you think teams have got enough visibility? Kind of. So you mentioned.
Yeah. Well, I think we're in a very interesting space because on one end of the spectrum, brands are preaching virality, right? You have to trend. We'll do anything to trend. We'll do anything to be viral. And then on the other end, it's like you have to go through all this work to license the song, right? You have to go, for example, if you want to license a mainstream track, there could be 5 different writers. It can take 3 weeks to get involved, to get everyone to be aligned on a fee. And by that time, many brands feel that viral moment has passed. So where is that balance in the industry, and how do we regulate that? Because the last thing we want is for people to just infringe freely and then ask for kind of like forgiveness in the way of like a settlement, right? We do want to compensate our rights holders fairly, but again, also have them be part of that creative process. There is like something in the beauty of negotiating a sync license where the rights holder is aligned. That artist is giving you their approval. They like the creative. They're seeing this again. There's something for me that I just find that brings me a lot of joy. It's just that like whole kind of process that happens together where there's just so much alignment versus like the back end where it's like, yeah, we are sorry and we kind of need to make this go away.
In an AI era, do you think that it's more complicated to define ownership? For example, when AI can generate music, voices, images?
Yeah, and that's like one of the hardest things, right? With like a terms and condition of let's say an AI kind of company that is kind of producing whatever it might be the content. It's who owns it in the terms and condition. If you're prompting it and something is generating it, who is the owner, right? And to what extent and to what do they own and how is it created? Like, for example, is there a musicologist analyzing your prompt versus the output and saying, oh yeah, this sounds way too close to the song that you were trying to replicate or you're trying to draw inspiration from. So, and I don't think we're there yet. It's a bit scary because again, this goes kind of back to that AI question with the Copilot: is how much of the lift are we doing when we're producing something versus the AI? And then again, in those terms and conditions with these various companies, who's owning it? Can I say that, oh yeah, I created this track in an AI platform, and because of my prompt, I own it, or because they did all the instrumentation and remixing and engineering on the back end, they own it? So.
And do you think there's some misunderstood risks around AI and rights that marketers should be aware of?
Yes, definitely. I would just double check everything, every term and condition. We just, unless it's explicit that people have opted in and they're able, they're allowing their music to train certain data, or their persona to be replicated in kind of these AI tools. If it's not explicit, like, I would definitely take a very, again, conservative approach that you would want to double check with that person, their agent, their team, the record label, the publisher, whoever it might be, the management for that artist, that they actually opted into something like this. So I take, I guess, a much more kind of like what's the approach? It's more like leave no stone unturned, right? And you have to kind of like go everywhere, search everywhere, and if you can't find the answers, ask everyone, and make sure you get everything. Of course, it's like 101, but I definitely would definitely advise that for a lot of folks who are interested in that.
Do you see things, keeping on the AI thing for a moment, do you see AI as there's been a lot of uproar, let's say in Hollywood, about, certain characters being AI generated that look really human and can walk and talk. And do you see AI as a threat to artists and creators, or a way to open up new possibilities?
Oh, I definitely would find it to be more of a threat than I do believe it's both, but I would say it's probably like 60-40 to me as a threat. We're in an age right now where, and I talk about the newer generation, the Gen Z, and the attention span is very limited, right? We are, and even for us older folks, like, we're also now in that pattern too, right? Where we scroll, we do, we jump on different calls, and, we're constantly shifting gears. But I worry that what was important to our generation, millennials and older, is that there was a meaning behind an artist we liked, right? If it was the Eagles or Fleetwood Mac or, these big groups, like, there was messaging, there was something that felt untouchable about these groups that we loved their music, and we would go to these shows and experience. It was an experiential thing as well. And now I feel that music sometimes can be like a creative tool for a background track for a video, right? And so I don't know. All of this is to say is that I don't know, for example, if like a new artist is coming up and a new AI artist is also on the rise that they can completely generated and not really quote unquote real, like you can't physically like see them. Is it going to matter, right? Is it going to matter as much if you're using that artist's music? So I think it's harder for artists right now because not only because I think the metric was a couple months ago, like 100,000 tracks are getting uploaded to like Spotify daily. And so now on top of that, you're competing with a lot of other aspiring artists, but then a whole slew of other artists that are actually AI generated. So I just think, how do you break through if you are an artist now? So that's why I say there's more of a threat, because I don't know if it's going to be harder, and it's going to be a lot more like a needle in a haystack to try to find like true creators in any space, not just music.
Yeah, quite interesting. It's like it saturates the market, doesn't it, and kind of devalues human authorship, I suppose. And yeah, so it's quite interesting space. Yeah, no, it's it's a whole kind of minefield, isn't it? Really. But I kind of want to take it back a little bit away from AI just for a second, Rich. Curious to understand a bit more about kind of, you huge experience, Airbnb, TikTok, Meta. Obviously, you've got your own venture as well. Mm-hmm. I suppose, like, what is it that you've done currently or recently, or something memorable working with teams in those businesses, or yourself, that's led to big impact? And maybe it is to do with AI, or maybe it's ways that you streamlined processes, or workflows, or implemented something. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think it kind of touches on that note I mentioned earlier, but like we started analyzing creative performance not by numbers, but by the narrative, right? And this is like again happening in live time with the advent of AI. Instead of like tracking engagement, we look at what's actually resonating, visuals, words, moments, experiences, like what makes people feel things. This is a shift that you're seeing in some of these companies, like from inception of the creative idea all the way through the production process of a commercial. So I believe that shift has made our work, our campaigns, but our work also like more consistent across platforms. And I think that's also the bigger shift too, is brand consistency, right? And I think when you're kind of chasing the trends, and I say that very generally, like when you're chasing audiences or trends and followers, you lose a lot of that brand consistency. So I think that's something that we've been trying to do, especially on like the marketing side for the bigger tech companies, is to find that narrative where we're able to tell a genuine kind of story and something that is actually going to resonate, instead of pushing products and kind of what we're seeing across the board.
Yeah, it's kind of that age-old kind of long-term versus short-term marketing, and long-term is very, very, very important, isn't it? To engage with people and keep yourself relevant. I suppose kind of that follow-up question there then is, if you're kind of looking to create that brand consistency and not chase the virality so much, which of course you can. So you can hit cultural moments, of course, but what kind of metrics are you looking for? How do you define success? You've got the narrative there, and you talk about consistency, but what for you, what metrics are important, and is there something that you shouldn't be looking? What is overhyped?
I'd love to answer both of those, and I think what we are looking at that works is engagement, right? We do a lot of studies after campaigns, is engagement, retention, conversion, right? Are you converting? Darren, looking at your obviously a super impressive resume. Are you converting people from an Apple to a Samsung, right? And I've had the chance of also working for Samsung too on some marketing. So just what is that? The conversion metrics are just huge. But I think we also read the comments, audience sentiment is huge. What are people actually saying about, and this is something that I've actually seen live inside of rooms, is like, here's a PowerPoint slide with, here's the comments that, and highlighting not just the good comments that are like rate, but what are the ones that hurt a bit, and what are the ones that kind of like twist a little bit, and you're like, oh man, but those things value, we do value that as well. And then of course repeat engagement is big. So engagement, but then repeat engagement. Are they, do we go back? Are they sharing things? Are they reposting things? Or what is it that they really like? So sometimes it's like, not, the best indicator isn't always like a number, but it's when people start sharing your content in their own words. So, and I guess to answer your second question, like what is the most overhyped metric in my opinion, and this goes back to like my TikTok days, it's impressions. So I think they sound big, but they rarely mean much, because people can visit things for a very limited amount of time and cause impressions, and what does it actually mean? So I'd rather have like a small invested audience that acts on something versus like a million passive scrollers, because reach is very easy, but resonance is rare. So.
Yeah, no, thank you.
How do you think, yeah, I've got a few questions. How do you think brands can use music to connect across diverse audiences?
Yeah, I mean, music is a universal language. So we've all been somewhere where you've heard the music without watching the TV, right? And you kind of just grabs your attention. So I think making sure that your music is aligned to your messaging. And I'd say that it's not aligned to the production, it's the messaging. Because I think there's something very cool about a song, an unexpected track, right? When you hear a piece of music with a brand that you normally wouldn't align with, but then you like take a look at what the actual messaging is of the brand and what the crux of the story is that they're telling. And you're like, wow, it was like the perfect marriage of this piece of music and this idea. So I think we just have to go back to, and not be afraid to break barriers. Like, we obviously have Latin music here in the States that is just taking off like more than ever. But I do kind of feel that right now, like Latin music is like a household thing for non-Spanish speaking people. And I love that. I think, obviously being Puerto Rican myself, it's something that I'm very proud of. But when we think of Bad Bunny and all, he's just a very easy example, but not being afraid to explore different genres and go outside, go international. So I think that's something that brands should definitely be doing, and learning, again, maybe how to doing some research. So if you're a global brand, like, Darren, like an Apple or Coca-Cola, and you're going to place your product internationally, doing a little research on maybe what artist is popular in France. And when you run that ad in France, you're using that very unique piece of music, but then maybe something here in the States is going to be also very unique with an emerging artist here in the States. So learning, again, not to take the easy route of just saying we're doing a global campaign with one song and kind of one artist, but making it very unique and specific to each territory is something I would definitely find to be very cool.
When you think back to some of your favorite campaigns that you've worked on,
Sure.
Which one felt the most special?
Oh, wow. Oh, man. I think for me, there was a very cool actual Samsung spot that we did. And it was like right around Star Wars, at the launch of a Star Wars movie. And I got to license a piece of John Williams, which is, I think, for me, just a little nerdy, but also very cool. There's something unique, again, when we talk about the process of having an idea, but then aligning, there's so many moving parts with the brand, like the right partnerships, and then making that kind of like marriage happen with a creative idea. So you're launching a new product into market. There's a new movie coming out with that partner you just signed that deal with. Now you're able to leverage the music. You're able to leverage the creative, the storytelling about, you can integrate characters. So we did all of those into this piece. And I think for me, that was probably one of my most like enjoyable campaigns, just because it was like a feel good kind of spot too around the holidays. So I'm kind of, again, a sucker for a good story. So.
Yeah. How do you separate your own, let's say, musical taste from what's right for a given brand?
Oh yeah. That's like a really, really great question. It goes back to research too. So what I always do is like, we'll research old campaigns from brands and then say, okay, if they've done a lot here, let's maybe take them here, right? So when I was always putting tracks forward for brands in the supervision side, I had what I called like my wild cards. So I would put 2 or 3 songs, like I would give them maybe 8 songs that were on brief, and then 2 or 3 were going to be completely out of left field. And I think that sometimes helps push push brands in a direction like they weren't really, like they didn't even know they wanted to go. But sometimes it has to do with being open, right? So I think, again, you wind up falling into that brand. But to answer your question, I think I listen to everything on purpose. So it's making the right playlists and learning to say like, okay, yeah, like this is not going to fit for, this type of brand or this specific brief. But again, knowing like where to push the boundaries.
Yeah.
So.
And Rich, I know Darren kind of asked your favorite, a campaign that you've worked on, but making it a bit wider, like,
Sure.
Is there like a music that is your favorite kind of use of music in marketing? I'd love to hear your thoughts there.
Yeah, I don't know if I have like a favorite use of music. Yeah. It'd be very hard to pinpoint for me, but I did like, and what I will highlight is like during the pandemic, I love that Fleetwood Mac moment that happened with the ocean spray. If you remember with Dreams, that was just like, I just remember laughing because like with that moment, like again, all of us who know the track, like love the track, but there were a lot of like Gen Zers saying, hey, like the TikTok just broke this band from the 70s, they just didn't know like who they were. So I love that a moment like that can happen very organically. And it didn't have to be the new emerging track. So I think, to me, again, it's about the storytelling. So it's any piece of music that does well in storytelling. I think some of the ones that are harder for me are the ones that maybe try to leverage a piece of music to tell the story, because sometimes, again, when you're too married to the creative or the production of how things are going, it gets a little bit harder to enjoy that music.
Yeah. And Rich, is there any piece of advice that you'd give yourself if you could travel back to the times of the pandemic when you were growing up?
I guess it's very important in business affairs too, but build systems and processes early would probably be my biggest advice. Because looking back, maybe even 5 years ago, like we weren't talking about AI, we weren't talking about things like that, but not even about AI in general, but everything felt urgent. Even 5 years ago. So we're quick wins, you're pivoting fast, but setting up like scalable creative and operational infrastructure would have saved a lot of time for our teams. So I'd probably tell like myself like 5 years ago, like future-proof your workflow and your process so you can spend more time creating and less time chasing. Because I do feel like that's something that has been big in the business affairs world for a a while. It's just like this very, again, like I mentioned, like reactiveness. So build some of these systems early to get ahead of some of that.
Interesting. And then within that, are there like any particular like system designs that you could recommend to other people to use, or like apps or tools that might be useful for other people in your role listening today?
Yeah, I mean, anything that helps with organization. Like I don't have specific ones because I think there are so many different tools. Like I've used like Sauna and Airtable and things like that in the past. But anything that helps with organization is big. And any tool that is now becoming like has like an AI integration, I think is also very important. Things that are going to take again some of the manual work off of our desk and keep us again building these systems and keep us creating versus like going back and completing things, or that administrative side I think is what really takes away from many of our opportunities to continue to move fast. So hopefully a lot of these tools with this AI integration can help automate that.
Absolutely. Cool.
What's the one thing that, about the future of marketing that excites you, and one thing that worries you?
Oh wow, that's a great question. Future of marketing that worries me is that we are always we're always looking for the next thing before we finish the current thing. You probably know that better than me. But I do sometimes feel that, you know, a lot of, again, the transformation that many of us experienced in personal lives in pandemic years was being present, being intentional, right? Like we all had that like kind of moment where we went back to do that. And I just don't feel that the work side has followed up that much as well. I think we're constantly, before you're finished with things are already coming down and you're piling up. And so I think that worries me a bit, is like we're constantly moving too much. And I don't know if I think we're just sometimes creating to create, right? It's like we're just putting things out to put things out. So I would love to just see a little bit more, just things have a little bit more intention. So that's what worries me. And then things I'm excited about the future is like, I love the AI integration. I love, like I talked about, I love I think everyone has to adapt or kind of be left behind, but I don't think it's as scary as sometimes we envision it to be. I think it's how can we actually use tools to make things better and help things, right? And help people. We can help people, we can help processes, we can help, again, depending on what vertical or where you work. You know, I think it's a great thing to keep advancing opportunities and connections. So I'm very excited to see what the tools can bring in the next couple of years.
Absolutely. And Rich, yeah, what like, you know, where do you consume your kind of content, and you know, what I guess what's your favorite kind of podcast?
Yeah.
Where do you consume things that be interesting for others?
Yeah, so I'm really into Music Business Worldwide. That's like my thing. I go there all the time, and just you're seeing data everywhere. It's obviously a website, but there is there's a AI for Humans podcast that I really am interested in too, and a few others as well, music business podcasts, and of course, like our friend Abby Press has like a cool business affairs. Double Helix is called, so I would love to plug that in. And she kind of touches on the intersection of, like you mentioned, Darren, like business affairs and AI, and walking that, kind of towing that line, and what that means. So I think it's also important. Again, I also love some financial podcasts as well. I think it's nice to listen to things sometimes that have nothing to do with your industry. So just trying to stay current again on different things, but mostly again in the music and the business affairs space.
Amazing. I'm glad you like Abby Press. Yeah, she's great.
Yeah, she's amazing.
We've all been there, Rich, but what's the biggest misconception that people have about what you actually do?
Oh yeah. You're the no police. That's kind of what we hear in our world. So the biggest misconception is that we're like creative blockers in the business affairs world, but what we really are partners. We want to have the cool work be done as well. We want the best creative. We really are team players in that sense. So. Um, but we do just have to ensure that we're protecting our clients, our company, our rights holders. Reputation is everything in our industry, and then once you have a reputation of violating copyright or IP, it's a little bit of a hard one to come back from, in my opinion. So I think again, we are collaborators above all, so we don't want to block anything.
And Richard, what's like one piece of advice or something that memorable that a mentor's told you in the past that stuck with you?
Oh wow. I would love to plug like one of my old directors too. Poor management on your end doesn't equal a crisis on mine. I think accountability is huge in our world too, and being able to stop. Like I think one thing that happens is like we make a lot of problems for other people sometimes by not having accountability. So learning to communicate, learning to collaborate ahead of time and share responsibilities is probably like a big piece of advice that I've learned from that mentor is just, kind of also managing your kind of managing your desk, right? Like if I'm not going to let something spill over on my end to make Darren's life miserable. So, and again, so it's like, and if you do, it's like communication is huge too. Like it's like I feel like it's 101, but I don't think we communicate it as well as we used to. And just say, hey, this is the issue I'm encountering. So if we can do a little bit more of that, and that that would probably be a great piece of advice that I would pass on to someone else.
Definitely make the workplace much easier and smoother, wouldn't it?
Definitely.
Right. Darren, have you got any other questions there?
I guess what keeps you inspired?
Oh wow. Community, I don't know, building a community, people like yourselves, like coming on, talking to people who I can align with. So that really keeps me inspired. Being creative and pushing boundaries, taking, liberties to go outside of the norm. That keeps me inspired, as well as, again, I think we are all creatures of habit. We all will kind of all stay in our lane from time to time, and just having a community that can bring you out of that and introduce you to new things is very important. So that definitely keeps me inspired.
I've got one final question for you, Richard, and that's anything else that you've got. But imagine you're organizing a music festival. Sure. And you're organizing the headliners for the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I'm just curious to hear what musicians, artists you'd have play.
Oh yeah, I take you, like I have like my constant favorites. So, I'm a big Leon Bridges fan, so I would definitely bring him on. I got a chance to see him. Alan Stone is also one of my guys too. Not super well known people. From the past, I definitely bring on the Eagles. I'm like a Eagles fan at heart since early on. And then on my Latin side, I think you have to bring on like a Bad Bunny and Mark Anthony. I think those folks just resonate very well. And then you can build like great supporting acts for all of those different artists. So.
Yeah, love it. I'd go to that. I'd buy for sure. Yeah, well, unless Darren, you've got any other questions.
No, it's amazing.
Yeah, no, it's really good. And unless Rich, there's anything that you want to say, any bits that you want to get off your chest, but otherwise, it's been amazing.
I mean, I guess I have a question for both of you is, what in both of your different experiences, or I guess verticals or positions, is where do you find like the real impact is coming from both your respective industries, is now that times are changing again, the integration of AI. And I don't know who wants to go first.
I'm happy to go first, as Darren kind of marinates his thoughts a little bit, but it's going back to AI. It's always the kind of the big topic, isn't it? And with sales and marketing, business development, it's all automation and using things to gather information and streamline and work quicker. So I think conversely, it's all this AI efficiencies led to humans being more important than ever, and that kind of unique ability of humans to just talk to people and have that interaction and lead to human connection that can lead to something is more important than ever. But you've got AI to do the boring bit, I guess. So for me, yeah, that's me.
I'm excited about, similarly to Ophir, the power that AI can deliver in terms of speeding things along and doing some of the more mundane things and unpacking some of the spaghetti of numbers or concepts and make it more crystal clear. From a creative standpoint, I might worry that what I find is there's sort of a least common denominator with AI, and it can start to converge on the average. And it requires a lot of work. So I always think AI is great, but it requires a lot of energy into it in order to make something amazing with it. So it's not just like do this and you get it. It requires an active involvement and also really understanding the strengths of the AI tools you're working with and their limitations, because they all have them, right? So if you don't know those, it can give you a false sense of security. So if you know where you can push the limits of it, it's a great place to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that, Rich. I don't think I've ever been asked a question.
First time for everything.
Yeah, that's very kind. But yeah, no, thank you. That's everything. So thank you so much, and yeah, it's been great to have you on here.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity, and pleasure to meet you, Darren, and great to see you again.
You too.
Yeah, pleasure. Stay in touch and catch up soon.